Okay, so I got the engine off the engine stand and into my carport, sitting on some tyres, and I've put the rear plug in, the Welsh plug I managed to put in when it was on the stand, the rear main seal, and a new pilot bearing. I originally had a needle bearing, but after thinking about it, it's not going to be a good idea because if it loses its grease, then it's going to seize. And I researched it, and it's more for race applications where you are always taking the box off so you can re-lubricate it. So yeah, I'll just resell that one and use the brass bushing provided with the clutch pack. What I got to do now is just put the flywheel on, torque up the bolts, obviously clean the face first, and then torque the bolts to spec. I got some ARP flywheel studs and a brand new machine flywheel. Then I got a Nismo 3-puck clutch that I'm going to put on and align that, and then I'll put the throw-up bearing on the holder, new throw-up bearing, take the old one off, and then finally bolt the box on. I'll just sand up the face a little bit and sand the metal spacer plate. I wouldn't really call it a gasket, it's just a spacer plate. So I'll sand that, sand the face of the gearbox, and clean up the splines, and then lightly grease the splines. When you buy the clutch, it comes with some grease, so I'll lightly grease the spline and also put some grease in the pilot bushing and then chuck it on, and then that's all good, ready to go in the car tomorrow. So yeah, all sweet. Okay, so I've torqued the flywheel on, and now I'm putting the clutch on. So I cleaned up the face of the flywheel and all the bolts and everything, and I've just put the clutch alignment tool in and the clutch. This is an XCD 3-puck, and this is the pressure plate, so I'll put that on now as well, and then obviously put on the bolts. I'm going to use some red Loctite on them because I don't trust them not coming loose, and if they do come loose, then it's a big problem. So I'll put some Loctite on just to be sure. So I'll align all that now, and then once that's bolted on, I can put the throw-up bearing in the gearbox, bolt the gearbox on, and all sweet. Okay, so the clutch is on, quite easy to install. Yeah, I did this up to 22 foot-pound and put some red Loctite on them, and it's all aligned. Looks pretty sweet. So now I put the throw-up bearing on, and then put the gearbox on. Should be all good. Okay, so I've assembled the throw-up bearing onto the holder. It's quite easy to do, just press it in with a vise and just a couple pieces of wood. To knock off the old one, just use a punch, and then slip it on like so, with the spring facing how I'm shown. I did this wrong to start with. I put the spring around the wrong way, assembled the whole thing, and then it wasn't working correctly, and I was wondering why, and pretty sure that's why, so make sure you put that spring the right way. Then when you buy the throw-up bearing, or when you buy the kit, it comes with assembly lube, but if you don't have that, just use high temp grease. And obviously I installed this already, so the grease is sort of a little bit in the splines as well, but put it on here so it goes into the pilot bushing, a little bit on the splines, and then some on the pivot ball. You want to put most of it on the pivot ball because that's where it squeaks when you push the clutch in. If that's dry, it'll squeak. Try not to put too much on the splines because you don't want it going into your clutch, but you don't want it to be dry when you're installing it. You just want it nice and smooth. But yeah, put the majority of the grease on the pivot ball, and obviously don't put any on the face of the throw-up bearing because that'll end badly. So now I'm just going to install it. Hopefully I can do it. I might need a helping hand, but yeah, it should just slip in like so. The pilot bushing is brand new, so it is quite tight. It's when it's worn, it slips in really easily, and when you put a new pilot bushing in, it's quite tight in there, as it should be. I mean, the reason for the pilot bushing is to seal around this, and so it doesn't slop around. So if it's worn, it'll obviously slip in well. Where if it's tight, it'll yeah, it won't go on that great. So it's a bit of a pain in the bum. But we'll see how we go. Hopefully I can get it on. Sweet. So when it's all installed, it should operate as so. Obviously when you actually engage your clutch, it only moves about that much. Doesn't move a hell of a lot. You can slip it all on as one unit. You can put the throwout bearing to the fork and slip it all in. You just got to be careful that the clip doesn't come off, so just hold it. Other people will put the fork in first and then clip the throwout bearing to the fork, and I find it quite difficult doing that way. If you put it all as one unit, it's quite good. Just put the metal clips that clip around the pivot ball up, and then when you slide it along, just clip them down and they'll go over the pivot ball, and it's really easy. And just put the boot back on, and then we can slip it onto the engine. Okay, so the box is on and everything's in, so now it's ready to install into the car. Got it set up on the engine crane. I'm using a sling. I choked it on the last intake, the last exhaust runner. Then it comes over, comes up, down, and then around the first intake runner, and it's against this metal bit. Then it comes under, and then over, and against this metal bracket, so it's not going to hit the fuel rail. It's quite strong, and then loop it back onto the thing. It's not like no knots or anything, so, and it's 4-ton sling or something, so it's definitely going to be adequate, and it lifts on a fairly nice angle as well. So now we got to put in the car. Cool. The engine is ready to go in, so the engine bay has been cleaned and removed the aircon, and there's no aircon compressor anymore, so there's lots of room. So now we'll jack it up and put it in. Sweet. Okay, so the engine's all in. Here's how it looks. I'm getting some new hot side pipe made up, all in stainless, so it gets rid of all that shit there. Still have to bleed the power steering and stuff like that, and the coolant. Haven't even started it yet. So without further ado, I'll start it up. Hopefully it works, and hopefully my battery's still good.